My advice would be that if you are pregnant or thinking about being pregnant, that you start educating yourself around the laws. If you're a drug user, especially, start educating yourself. I don't see them writing laws or like the Supreme Court getting involved with men getting snipped, basically, so that they can't have children anymore, right? Like, all of these things are being imposed on women.
You're listening to Narcotica, a podcast giving you the straight dope about drugs and the people who use them.
Imagine a future where abortion drugs like mifepristone or misoprostol are trafficked just like fentanyl or methamphetamine, where birth control is sold on the street corner like crack cocaine. It's really not that distant of a reality if it's not happening already, thanks to draconian laws that surveil the reproductive systems of millions of Americans. The drug war is deeply intertwined with reproductive rights. It's not always obvious to some people, especially certain cis white males, but at Narcotica we will emphasize over and over again that bodily autonomy, the core of harm reduction and progressive drug policy, includes abortion access and reproductive sovereignty as much as it includes the human right to freely use whichever chemicals you prefer. America was already descending into a dystopian nightmare, but the process is accelerating ever since the Supreme Court gutted Roe v. Wade. In many states, a positive drug test while pregnant has turned into a justification for jailing people. In some places, this was already true before this year, but it's getting worse. In Oklahoma, for example, pregnant people who use medical cannabis have become the target of the state's attorney generals, according to recent reporting from the Marshall Project, while Alabama is jailing pregnant marijuana users to, quote, protect fetuses, according to The Guardian. And that's just cannabis. With opioids or stimulants, the situation gets even more dark. But because these so-called hard drugs are viewed in a lesser light than weed or psychedelics, even some people in harm reduction are okay with stigmatizing drug use if the person is pregnant. Why is that? Why do even, quote, progressive drug policy folks change their tune as soon as a uterus enters the equation? And is there any hope for the future in a post-Roe world? I'm Troy Farah, and you're listening to Narcotica. We've got a great show today. Our guest is Dinah Ortiz, a drug user activist who has fought for over 14 years for impacted communities. We discuss the surveillance state that was built around the drug war, how that is being weaponized against anyone with a uterus, but also the importance of narco-feminism and drug user organizing. But first, a little bit about Narcotica. We've been on the air for 4 years, trying to cover drugs from a perspective of compassion, science, and evidence. You can find us on iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, and all that. So if you can do the like and subscribe thing, please, it does help us out. You can visit our beautiful website, narcocast.com, to find all kinds of episodes on psychedelics, opioids, stimulants, learn more about drugs like ketamine or abortion pills, or how drug courts can create more harm than they address. Drugs are a big, big category, and they let us talk about all kinds of other aspects of social justice, from sex worker rights to the need for universal health care. We have a lot more to cover, and no intention of stopping this show anytime soon, but your help is what keeps us going. If you want to join about 70 other people who make Narcotica possible, just go to patreon.com/narcotica. Patrons can request free stickers, which will be personally mailed to you. We also have a PayPal if that's easiest. Just send your donation to narcoticapod@gmail.com. At Narcotica, we have bills to pay, just like everyone else. Everything is getting more expensive, I guess because there's a recession or something. I don't really know. I don't pay attention to the stock market as much. But it's very humbling that folks care enough about this little podcast that just wants to see some goddamn common fucking sense applied to drug policy. So thank you so much for your support. We're also excited to announce that Narcotica is going to start giving back. We are a messaging service, and that's important, but we want to support the folks doing actual on-the-ground work as well. So, 10% of our monthly income will now go to support the Urban Survivors Union, a grassroots coalition dedicated to ensuring respect, dignity, and social justice for our communities. We love the work that USU is doing and are happy to sponsor them, so anything you give to us, a little bit will go to them. You can learn more about USU at druguservoice.org. Thanks for listening. That's all the technical stuff. Now on to the show. Our guest today is Dinah Ortiz, an Afrolatinx drug user activist who has fought for over 14 years for impacted communities. After her role as supervisor at the Bronx Defenders Family Defense Practice, Dinah began doing consultant work as a drug user organizer and activist who has shared her story of parenting during past chaotic substance use and is a fierce advocate for parents in the child regulation system. Currently the co-chair on the North Carolina Survivors Union Board of Directors and leadership team of the Urban Survivors Union. Dinah, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's start with a little bit about your story, if you feel comfortable sharing it. I don't know that much about you actually, and but I do know that you are sort of this active voice for the rights of drug users. But tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. And I definitely don't mind. It's my story. I've always been, transparent about my story. So I absolutely do not mind telling it. Basically, I lost my mother when I was 13 years old. She passed away from cancer, and I did not have a good relationship with my father. So although, I was in the home with him at the time, I really was kind of raising myself. And I started using when I was 16. I started using socially, and basically, just from here and there, every other weekend or whatever. I always worked, always kept a job. When I turned 18, I had my first kid, my first son, and I wasn't using at the time. I didn't use at all or whatever. Then right after my second son, I started to use again, just socially or whatever. Then I had my third son. And then, it was sporadic use in between or whatever. And that is when I had my third son, I was actually with my husband, or my soon-to-be husband at the time. And he was using heroin. And I had never used heroin before. And so also we were living in Florida, and we moved from Florida to come to New York, which I'm originally from. And we were in the shelter. And so I started using heroin also. And basically that triggered a CPS call, a child service call. And that is the beginning of my life spiraling down as far as structural systems. And I started, when I was using heroin, I was using it I got up to using, I think at the max I was using a bundle a day, which is 10 bags a day. And I struggled with my own use because, I wasn't content with where I was. Also, I was in, a loveless marriage, a lot of things going on. So I got on methadone or whatever. Then I had my third child. My fourth child, sorry, which was my daughter. And at that time I was on methadone, and, because I was using, and I was not educated at all. So I was told that my daughter was going to die, that I was going to kill my daughter, blah, 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 blah. I kept using. And so one of my street friends told me to get on methadone. So I did. When I went to the doctor, I was maybe 6 or 7 months already, because I was afraid to go to the doctor. And I have been on methadone for a while. And so I shared with this man, this white man, crystal clear blue eyes. He must have been 70 years old. I'll never forget him. Proudly, I shared with him that I had, stopped using heroin, and that I went to methadone. And he screamed at the top of his lungs that I was basically substituting one drug for another, and that I was going to I was willingly killing my baby, and that he refused to treat me, and literally just walked out on me.
Wow.
Yeah. And so I walked out of the office. Everybody in the lobby was staring at me. Everybody heard, I'm sure. And I was mortified. So I basically stopped using the methadone too. I stopped taking methadone. And I just started using so I wouldn't be sick. And, eventually gave birth. I had a C-section, and I had benzos, residue from heroin in my system, methadone, all kinds of stuff in my system. So ultimately what happened with that was that my daughter was adopted by my brother and his wife, not willingly, actually. I was forced, I was put in a position where I had no choice. And it was they basically, the CPS convinced my brother and his wife that I would not be able to raise her, that she was better off with them. what have you. And then, a lot of things were taking place at the time. And so then when that happened, that was like, forget it, like, fuck it. I took my kids, my sons, and I came to New York because we ended up in the streets. We were homeless, all kinds of things. And so we just moved back to New York, and I just kept on using from there.
That's, I'm really sorry that's happened to you. That's just terrible. Especially you mentioned you didn't go to the doctor till you were like 6 or 7 months along in your pregnancy because you were scared. And like, that is a legitimate fear. And it seems like those fears were confirmed by the way this white doctor was treating you.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry that happened to you because we've talked about this on the show before, but like the stigma against pregnant drug users is just, it creates way more harm than it purports to solve or address. And that's clearly been your case. Like, stigmatizing against you for using methadone, obviously created more risky drug use. And like, instead of like, I don't have to tell you this, but, but because of systemic racism, this is right. I mean, like this guy puts you at more risk and your baby.
Yeah, no, definitely he did.
So bring us to today. What's going on with you now?
So, my daughter is about to be 20 years old. Actually, I know I haven't spoken to her adoptive parents since I left Florida, and that was like 18 years ago. And so they never told her that she was adopted, and she only found out like maybe 4 years ago, and she sought out to find me, and we've had a relationship ever since, thankfully. And my sons are great. My older son is a sergeant in the Army, lives in Hawaii. I'm actually going over there for a few months next month. And my two younger sons live out here, both of them with their girlfriends, and I live by myself with a roommate, and I am doing activism work. I was working at a small nonprofit organization at the beginning of like me learning about movements, because in Florida, there was no such thing as movements out there or unions, supporting us or anything. So I started out in the formerly incarcerated movement, or the mass incarceration movement. And started working at a small grassroots organization. I was there for 2 years. And from there, I went on to work at that public defense office and kind of worked my way up. And what I realized working there was that all of the parents that I was representing the majority of them were there for drug use. Like, literally, those were the only allegations: drug use. Not that there was harm to the child, not that the children were being abused, but the parents were using substances. And also that every day I walked into the court, the benches would be full with Black and brown people. I think I had one white client throughout the entire time that I was working, doing direct services. So, there were a lot of things that were like just kind of clicking for me. Also in between, like before Bronx Defenders and like while I was still with the other organization, I did a internship at National Advocates for Pregnant Women with Lynn Paltrow. And I learned so much from her just about like the advocacy towards, for people for mothers who use drugs and for pregnant mothers who use drugs.
Yeah. Lynn Paltrow is amazing. We've had her on the show before, and I have learned so much from her as well.
She is like, she's a mentor to me, honestly. Like, I learned so much from her and from another woman, Emma Ketteringham, that works at the Bronx Defenders. Like, literally, they were the ones that, because I was of the mind frame that, that the child regulation system came into my life and they saved me. Or because also, I was in prison too for 2 years when I was in Florida. And so like that saved me, right? Like I was of that mindset. And so, it was these two white women that kind of like, nope, it didn't save you. It actually like, traumatized you and your kids, and so it was just amazing. Like moving on from there. And when I noticed, all of the things that I learned, at the representing the clients, I was like, this is wrong. Like, this is absolutely wrong. And I need to speak about it. I need to tell my story so that other mothers feel comfortable telling theirs. And so I started, I had been speaking publicly back in the other organization, but not as transparent as I started to do. And I just started talking about my story and throughout the years and ended up doing it for like the entire 10 years that I was there.
Wow. That is quite a journey. And I'm glad you feel comfortable sharing your story with people so that others can relate to it. A lot of what you've gone through is fucking horrific. That's really just the way to describe it. But it seems like as bad as things are for a lot of pregnant people who use drugs or mothers that use drugs, it's about to get worse. And
yes,
I that's why I kind of wanted to bring you on to talk today about drug use in a post-Roe world. Going back a couple months, Roe v. Wade was overturned. Planned Parenthood versus Casey was overturned. What was your initial reaction to that?
It was like I got hit by a bus, right? Like I wasn't alive in the 60s and the 50s, but I felt like that was the era that we were living in. Like we, I had some meetings going on that Friday, and like most of them I couldn't attend. One of them, was kind of like open room just for us to kind of talk and vent. And it was like, there were no words. Like I couldn't formulate words to say how horrific and how harmful that was. So yeah, I mean, still, you hear me now, like still to this day, it just like I'm still in shock.
I know. It still feels unreal. And I'm in California. So I get this sense from a lot of people out here that there's this sort of false sense of security. Like California is moving towards enshrining abortion rights into the state constitution if they haven't done that already. They're just trying to make it really strong here for abortion access. But I'm not really reassured by that. I really don't feel like that. I feel like I'm glad that my state's doing that. I really am. I'm glad that for once, Governor Newsom is doing something not neoliberal bullshit. But I don't think it's going to be enough protection. And there's a lot of risk, a lot of hazards that could happen in the future. But, for listeners, maybe let's unpack this a little bit. People that may not fully understand, but why do drug surveillance laws especially make it more dangerous right now to be a person with a uterus?
The fact of the matter is that, pregnant mothers, specifically, marginalized pregnant women or pregnant people are the most surveilled, right? Drugs or not. And then on top of that, when you add drugs to the equation, it's like you're under a microscope. And so you are automatically seen as a bad mother, a bad person. You are triggered in the system, basically. And you're lucky if you get to keep your child when your child is born, all because you are a mother who uses drugs or a pregnant woman who uses drugs. People are going off of like junk science and not actual scientific facts, right? That like the most harmful thing for a fetus or, when you're pregnant is actually alcohol and cigarettes and nicotine, right? And so, not anything against alcohol, right? But like those are the most harmful, not crack, not heroin, not methamphetamines, not any of that. Alcohol and nicotine. And so, because it's been embedded in us throughout the years with all these commercials and with all the, say no to crack and the Reagan slogan that she put out, and this is your brain and this is your brain on drugs with a fried egg. Like all of that, it's almost like we're robots. And all of that was like little bits of information that they were like planting, little seeds they were planting in us throughout the years. Right.
Yeah.
And it's made it so that we are now at a place where we're creating policies that are completely against family reunification or family unity or anything to do with like helping a family move forward or helping a mother move forward.
Right. Yeah. It is completely true what you were saying, that you're put under a microscope. There's so much scientific evidence to suggest that, the worst thing you could do for an infant is to take it away from its mother. I mean, like that's creating more trauma and hurting the development of that way more than the drugs would. Then there becomes like this really weird Orwellian language that is used, like chemical endangerment of a child, which just, I mean, for some reason that makes me think of like gassing people in Syria or something like that. But like this is real language that is applied to somebody who's pregnant or a mother that uses drugs.
It's almost as if like you're no longer a human being after that. You become an object that's carrying this fetus that they only care about the fetus. Yeah. And this kind of brings me to some of these news stories that have been coming up. Some stuff was like in the Washington Post and Alabama.com or something. I'm just going to kind of read this because it's just fucking horrific. But this woman, Ashley Banks, was arrested on May 25th. She had a small amount of marijuana and a gun without a permit to carry, which I don't think is really relevant. But she would have normally been able to post bond and leave jail under her criminal trial. Mm-hmm. But she admitted to smoking pot and she admitted to being pregnant. So she couldn't leave jail unless she was able to enter drug rehab. But she wasn't able to get into the program, so she was just in jail for 3 months. And she's just not like the only one. There's like all kinds of these cases that are happening where pregnant women and new moms are being accused of exposing their fetuses to drugs, this whole chemical endangerment of a child. They're held for weeks or months inside these detention centers because they can't afford rehab, let alone these cash bail that is just so expensive. And because like the moment of conception is being used as this, like the instant you're pregnant, if you use drugs, like now you're suddenly a child abuser. Now you suddenly deserve to be in prison for so long. Like this is just insanity. Yeah, it's immediate neglect or abuse of your child, of the fetus, actually. Right. What can people do about this? Because I mean, this is just sort of really, really scary to sort of be living in this world where it's getting, where one day, you know, because you're smoking weed, like you can be thrown in jail for 3 months like that. It's just crazy. Yeah. The thing is that like you have to educate yourself, you know, around the laws in your state, you know, because it's different in every state and in rural area. Like, you know, and I don't want anyone to take offense to this comment, but like in rural areas, like the poor white people are the black people of that, you know, of that city, right? Like the way we get treated is how they get treated. And so it's like you know, the constant surveillance and all that stuff is the same exact thing, right? With poor white folks. And so they have to really depend on each other, community support and learn the laws in your state. Because if you are at least aware of what can and cannot be done, right? Like then you know how you can advocate for yourself or seek out an advocate that can assist you, that knows about these systems, you know, that are in place. I'll give you an example. Over here in New York, basically, the hospitals, and I think they're still doing it most of all, but like hospitals in poor areas are drug testing women, pregnant women, when they give birth, and not even like letting them know. Like they're you know, submitting these toxicologies and not even making the mother aware, right? And so when we started to look at, and this was a few years back when I was still at BXD, when we started to like look at the numbers, it was like horrific. Like the numbers were so big and enormous when it came down to what mothers were being tested and which ones weren't. And that's not even a law. Like it's not a law that you have to drug test a pregnant woman. Well, not in New York State, that you have to drug test them. It's not a law that when they give birth, you have to drug test them. They're just doing it because they want to. And let alone, they're not even advising that this is what they're doing. So, you know, they give you a bunch of documents to sign, and then they slip that document in, and you're just signing away because you're in labor and you're just about to give birth and you're in pain and all this stuff. And so you're just signing just to get rid of this. And in those documents is one small letter document that says, and we will, you know, I agree to be drug tested, basically. Yeah. And like, nobody knows about, like, no parent thinks about that, right? Like nobody pregnant thinks about that until it happens. And so my advice would be that if you are pregnant or thinking about being pregnant, that you start educating yourself around the laws. If you're a drug user, especially, start educating yourself around what supports you have around you that are harm reduction focused, what the laws are based on pregnant mother using drugs, and really, really try to connect with as many support networks as possible that are, like-minded. So only in New York, I know. I don't know many, like in other states. In Colorado, when I went out there, it was crazy. It was one woman who was a parent advocate and would travel up to 4 hours to go and represent, a parent. And she was only getting like a $50 stipend a week. But she was doing it because she was so passionate about it. But like a lot of states really don't have that type of advocate. Or if they do, the advocates are pro CPS, pro, like stop using drugs, all this stuff, you must remain abstinent. And so if they don't have that, I would suggest that maybe even thinking about getting with a few community members and maybe starting something up. I know it's easier said than done, but even if you're doing it from home where you're just doing it, a couple of days a week, starting out just so you can get known out there and make, connections, then do that, because not enough states have that available. And when they do, like over here, for example, ACS has their own parent advocates in their office, right? So when I would go with my client to meetings, they would offer her their parent advocate. Their parent advocate sits down after the meeting with them and shares everything that the client has expressed to them, right? Is in ACS's office all day long. And then all she does is make, form relationships and speak to them. So clearly she's not advocating for my client. She's advocating for ACS. So like, you have to get someone, you have to find someone, or even a friend. It could be a friend. It doesn't have to be a professional, a friend that knows the laws and knows the policies and knows about harm reduction and can come and advocate. Because if you do have an ACS case and you go to meetings, you have the right to bring anyone you want. And so you can have that person come with you and just advocate for you.
That's good advice. I kind of want to talk about how birth control and abortion drugs are sort of now entering the underground market. I mean, I'm sure they always existed on the underground market before this, but it's becoming more of a thing. It's more prevalent because access is getting shut off. And now this is sort of I don't know. It's so weird to think of like people selling abortion pills on the street corner. I mean, that's not exactly what's happening, I don't think, but
yeah, but it will be soon though. Like literally it will be.
Do you know what's happening in terms of this and like how, I mean, what can people do? I mean, like I would hate if like these drugs started becoming adulterated. I hope that they're mostly just being diverted from actual pharmacies or other countries that, don't have their heads up their ass, like Poland or something like that.
So fortunately, in New York, we're not restricted right now, right? Like we're not yet. Like the abortions we're still able to get them. But I know that in North Carolina, where I am the co-chair of the board there of North Carolina Survivors Union, I know there it's more difficult, right? Like their abortion is no longer acceptable, and so like there you have to buy it in the street. Or you have to find connections, to someone that has connections that can get it, or have somebody send it to you from a different state. But it's literally like the feeling of it is like you are buying drugs, right? Like it's that kind of nostalgia of like, this is what I do when I'm buying drugs. I'm being very secretive. I'm being, I don't want to get caught. Like all of these things you're doing to get stuff that should be available to you over the counter.
Yes, it should be over the counter. I think it's worth emphasizing over and over again that abortion drugs are very, very safe. And there's no reason that you need to talk to a doctor or a pharmacist to get them. They should be right next to the Tylenol.
Yes. And I don't see them writing laws or like the Supreme Court getting involved with men getting snipped basically so that they can't have children anymore, right? Like all of these things are being imposed on women. But there's no type of prevention, being put in place for men. They just completely like traumatized an entire era of women. Probably like killed a lot of women. And the men just are going along as if nothing. Just earlier today, I was listening to a story about a woman that lives in Texas, and she's pregnant, or she is pregnant, and the doctor basically told her that her baby would suffocate once the baby was born because of some type of disease, some rare disease, and because she can't get an abortion. What that means, the doctor told her, like, in any other time, I would tell you that the best thing is to have an abortion, right? Because she's in Texas, she cannot get an abortion. So she has to carry her baby to term, give birth, and then watch her baby die within seconds.
Yeah. I mean, that is just completely fucked up, horrific, terrible. It's torturous.
Yeah.
I mean, I could use other words, but it's
yeah, exactly.
Completely immoral. I can't believe I'm living through this sometimes, like, we knew this was going to happen too. Like, this is not a surprise.
No, exactly.
Some people are surprised. I mean, a lot of white male politicians are like, wow, this is the law that happened. And I can't believe this is what the fucking consequence is. But people have been saying this is what will happen for years. We knew this was coming.
Yep. Exactly. And then Trump happens, right? Not that it started with him, because it has been just like little by little, like,
right.
Throughout the years, just kind of like planting that seed and making sure that the Supreme Court has the right players, right? Like, that's what, they were strategic. They were strategic because they've been planning this all along.
Right. Their goal isn't to protect babies. I mean,
not at all.
Total bullshit. But
all.
Tell me what you think their goal is, because I think we both know
Honestly,
the answer. But
I think their goal has nothing to do with babies, or I think their goal is power. They have the power to do this, right? They don't want to be, they claim that they are pro-life, right? But pro-life stops after the baby turns 5. And that's just an estimation, right? Like that stops then. Right? Because they don't get involved. You have to feed the baby and you have no money, or, you clothe. They don't get involved then, right? They're not pro-life then.
Right.
So to me, it's all about the power that they can wield. It's not anything about family or caring about, fetuses or anything about that. It is about the power that they can wield.
Yeah. As George Carlin says, if you're preborn, you're fine. If you're preschool, you're fucked.
Yeah. Yes. Basically, exactly that. One thing that I would tell, like, the CPS workers and the foster care workers when I was, doing direct services was, at what age do you stop caring about the child? Because we're all children, right? We all were born from parents. So, like, I wanted to know, like, at what age do you stop caring about the child? When they become an adult? Then what age? Because I've had represented children that have been in foster care their entire lives and then gotten pregnant and then became the adult that had an ACS case against them.
Wow.
Yeah, while still being in foster care. So they never had a good answer for me, though. And I'm just like, I need to know, like, what age does that stop? When do you stop caring?
I think anybody that claims to be, quote, pro-life, which is really just anti-abortion. I don't like euphemisms like pro-life or pro-choice.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're either pro-abortion or you're anti-abortion.
Yep.
Everybody needs to be asked that question. At what point do you stop caring? Because if you're not going to introduce social safety net measures that protect people from age 1 to 18, I totally agree with you what you're saying. That it is all about power. And I think that's sort of how reproductive rights and the drug war sort of intersect, is that it's all about power. It's not about drugs. It's not about babies.
Yep.
It's about controlling people. And
yep.
The people that have written both laws that govern reproductive rights and laws that govern drugs, it's explicit that this is why these laws were created.
Well, of course it is. I mean, look at, the conversation between Nixon and his right hand, right? Like, They plain out said it, like it's a war on people.
Yeah. And so I know when I talk like this, I get like a little skeptical of myself, and I'm like, you're just like believing in conspiracy theory, but it's like, it's fucking right there. Like anybody can go look at these interviews or
Yep.
It's so frustrating. And
they say the quiet part out loud all the time.
So this atmosphere of surveillance and policing and all this shit, like it's encouraging people to switch to things like home remedies for abortions, like pennyroyal tea and mugwort, which these are not actually that safe.
Of course not. Like anything that is not like monitored, like, in a safe environment is not safe. Like
Right. But I know that overconsumption of these pennyroyal tea and mugwort, they can cause liver failure. I mean, this can literally kill people because we're not allowing people to have access to the safer version, abortion drugs that are, really fucking safe. I just can't emphasize it enough. People are trying these things that they read about on the internet or they see in a TikTok video, and it's literally fucking harming them. So what can we do about that? Like, I mean, we besides trying to get the information out that but some people don't have alternatives, so they're gonna take whatever they have to. I mean, we're literally it's not hyperbole to say that we're back at the era of coat hangers and that kind of thing.
I was just thinking that. And honestly, it is the same as like why we have so many overdoses, right? Why we have so many fatalities on overdoses, because of the tainted supply that is out there, right? If it was just decriminalized and legalized, we would not have all of the numbers that we have, the statistics that we have. And that is what is happening with the birth control, or is going to happen, right? With the birth control, or with the abortion pill. Little by little, it's going to be tainted. You're not going to know what you get. They're going to start pressing them, right? Because like they do with Xanax and every other like pill on the streets, they're going to start pressing them because they're going to be so on demand that there's going to be the money market for it. And then by the time you know it, they don't know what they're taking, right? And what we need to do, and what we are so horrible at doing as a country, is fucking stand up and fight united, right? Like we should be walking out. We should be not going to work. We should like all united, just like stop the fucking press, right? And just take 1 day, 2 days. I know everybody, we can't do a week because, we're poor, right? But like take 1 day and just everybody just like fucking walk, go to Washington, D.C., walk in front of the fucking, the White House, just like, take action. I seen this happen, and I forgot. I wish I would have written down what country, but I seen this happen in another country a couple of months back. Right around it was around the Roe versus Wade. I think they were trying to do the same thing, and it was like so many people that you couldn't see the end of the line that had just went in front of like their nation's capital or whatever, and like they ended up not passing the law.
Yeah, I think it's always good to remind people that they have this amount of power. I've been hoping for a general strike to pop off at any moment now. I mean, not just for this, but for climate change and for a dozen other social issues that we could fix all this if we all kind of banded together. But it's a scary environment.
We don't want to be that person to speak up about it, right? We don't want to be that person to start the chaos or to start the fight. Some of us will join after it's already been started, but we don't want to be the ones to do so because we don't know, well, who's going to join? Are there going to be any people? Am I going to be the only one? Like all of these fucking questions, right? That come up, all of these doubts that come up. And because we think like that, nothing will happen. Nothing will change. The laws against women and women's body and their autonomy to their bodies are going to get stricter and stricter.
I think this is a good place to talk more about drug user organizing in general. Why is that important? I know that's sort of an obvious question, and we've talked about drug user organizing on this show quite a lot. I can't express how much it's important to do this, it's sort of I always, kind of think it's sort of a strange concept because it's not talked about very seriously in a lot of areas. But to stand up and say, I use drugs, I deserve the same level of human rights as everybody else, and I don't think that should change anything. Like, fuck it, if I use meth or if I use heroin or crack or whatever, it's none of your fucking business.
Yep.
I still deserve the same amount of respect and autonomy.
Mm-hmm.
This is all about autonomy, really. Like, at the end of the day, it's about owning your body and what you can put in it.
Mm-hmm.
As Lynn Paltrow says,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's drugs or sperm, whatever you put in your body, you should be able to regulate that.
Yep.
And so drug user organizing sort of serves as this tool for people who use drugs to come together and recognize each other and share that power to fight back against this bullshit.
Yeah. There are not enough words, complimentary words for me to say about drug user organizing. Like, that literally has saved my life, right? I told you that I left, Florida about 18 years ago, and I never spoke to my daughter's adoptive parents again, right? I actually have 5 brothers and 3 sisters. One of them is dead. The other one we're not in touch with. I only speak to one sister, and I don't speak to any of the men in my family, right? Because I was the black sheep. I was the one that used drugs. I was the one that, whatever, right? Anyways, the drug user organizing movement has become my family, right? Like, I'm part of the leadership team of Urban Survivors Union, and I cannot tell you where I would be had it not been for my colleagues there. Like, they're my family. Like, they're not my colleagues. They're my brothers. They're my sisters. Like, like more than what those blood people are to me, like, they are to me. To be able to reach out to them when you need them, to reach out to support, not only that, but also like making, networking and making, connections and making, getting projects to work on and being able to like make money off of these projects, like in every single way we support one another, we're working on right now in North Carolina Survivors Union, where I'm the co-chair of the board. We're working on a project called Narcofeminism, and it's a drug user women's storytelling project where it's about reproductive harm reduction. And we basically do, like, we go on panels and we speak about it, and it's everything about, being a pregnant or parenting mother who uses drugs, and I've been on there for like 4 years on that project, and it has been just so amazing because like it is an outlet also to be able to like say the things that you can't say to everyone about like your active drug use or your past drug use and being a parent. And it also, like, we also get to like go and speak about it, right? And we get to share about it. And we do like anonymous bias stories where people write their stories and they don't have to put their names, and we read them out loud. Like, all of these things I've been able to acquire while being part of the drug user unions. And I would not trade that for the world.
That's really great. Yeah, that's... I like to always balance all the negative bullshit out with positive stuff. So, like, people are doing the work and are trying to fight this stuff. Like, I know that there's a lot of despair and hopelessness right now, and that's valid. It's plenty of good reasons to feel that way. But there's also a lot of good progress being made. Can you define what narco-feminism is? I mean, it sort of seems self-evident what it is in the name, but like, how is it a little different from feminism in general, and what does that mean?
Well, it's not really about feminism. It's about just like having the autonomy to be, to parent your child and to put whatever substance in your body you want, right? That's what it's about. So the narco-feminism, narco clearly like the drugs, but the feminism is not the actual feminism that you see, like, doing actions and stuff. Is not that feminism. It's feminism as in like people who can give birth and parent children, right? Have the autonomy to use drugs or whatever substances they want. And we are the voices for that community. And so that's, basically, we also kind of adopted that word from, I think it was a place in Amsterdam. Louise had adopted that because I came in, it was already started, had adopted that name from them, and with permission, of course, because it fit exactly the work that they were doing at the time and that we're doing now.
I think we were talking the other day, and you mentioned that there's been more female leadership in harm reduction lately, and that's good to see that it's a lot less straight white men in positions of leadership, which of course you're nothing against that. But harm reduction has not always been very representative, and that's hopefully changing. And I think it really harm reduction needs to reflect the communities that are getting the most harm. I think that makes just logical sense. Like, if you want to reduce harm, ask these communities what they need. But I guess, what are your thoughts on this? Like, is it moving in the right direction, going to stagnating, or even maybe going backwards?
So, as you notice, I don't call myself a harm reductionist. I call myself a drug user, human rights activist.
Okay.
That's what we call ourselves at the union. And it's purposeful because harm reduction has been whitewashed, basically, right? And there's this hierarchy within the harm reduction world, that is kind of like, if you smoke cannabis, if you do cocaine, socially or whatever, then you're accepted into their world, right? But the minute it starts going any harder than that, it's a wrap. Like, now you're marginalized within the harm reduction movement. And so, to me, what I've seen throughout the years is a huge hypocrisy, a huge hierarchy, and just like stigmatizing manners towards our community, right? Like, I just don't feel like, I'll talk about harm reduction as a model of, like, that can be useful to people who use drugs, but I do not affiliate myself with harm reduction as a harm reductionist, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you. It has been whitewashed. Last year, I think, was the first time the federal government ever used the terms harm reduction to describe drug policy, which is great. Finally, they are catching up to something that is decades old. But at least it's sort of moving in the right direction. It's a little bit better at the federal response. But then Biden comes out over and over again recently talking about wanting to fund more of the police and, throwing more money at courts and jails and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't have a problem with people that use the term harm reduction or even identify as a harm reductionist, but this is a term now that is coming out of one side of Biden's mouth, harm reduction, and the other side is the drug war that he helped
lock them up.
build. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So it's frustrating, and you're right, it is whitewashed, and I guess you got to sometimes reclaim the terminology when that happens.
Yeah, it's just gotten to that point where, like, I am very clear and that I am a drug user, human rights activist, and I utilize the harm reduction model. And it's important because I think that within the harm reduction world, when you get to a certain kind of like place in your career or in your standing within the movement, you forget about the marginalized folks on the ground that are still getting arrested for using drugs, that are still getting their children taken away for using drugs, that are still homeless, experiencing homelessness for using drugs. Like, you forget about those. You forget about us, right? And so how are you connected then? And how are you able to advocate or, do any type of activism around drug users if you don't know what they're going through?
Yeah, that's a really good point. Is there anything else that people should know about on this topic? I kind of wanted to, it might be a little outside of what we're talking about, but I think people should, use some good online security when they're, researching topics about abortion or texting people. You should use an app like Signal or Session.
Signal, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that's just sort of, that's technical harm reduction.
Yeah, just
right?
I would say treat it as if like you were buying drugs, right?
Yeah,
treat it exactly the same way.
Fucking scary that you have to treat reproductive health as like you're buying drugs now. Like, I'm not a woman. I don't have a uterus, so it's hard for me to imagine sometimes that like there'd be an organ in my body that I have to think about as like being illegal or more regulated than a lot of other things.
Yeah. I mean, basically that is my advice. Treat it as if you were buying drugs, because that is what you're doing now.
Do you have any other advice for people that are, sort of navigating this new landscape? And
oh man, I would say to join a movement, find a union that you're comfortable with, that you feel comfortable with, and just join it, right? No offense to the rooms and to the NA and AA folks out there, but like when you come into a drug user movement, like you are at home. You are not displaced if you're using drugs. You are not displaced if you're on methadone or MATs. Like you actually are creating a new family, a new world where you are safe and you are loved and you are, accepted for who you are. The Urban Survivors Union, every Tuesday at 9:00, we have a national call. Please just come and just hear us out on the call. It's at 9 p.m. at night, and it's Urban Survivors Union. If you get the app GoToMeeting, then definitely go search for Urban Survivors Union, and it's a Tuesday call at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Great. Yeah, we'll have a link to that in the show notes as well so that people can check that out. I've been on a couple of these calls, and they're great. Yeah, people should go to them.
Yeah, I'm facilitating the one this coming Tuesday, so I'm looking forward to it.
So, Dinah, where can people find you online?
So Twitter is Dinah Ortiz 4, and my Facebook is Dinah Ortiz. So simple as that.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's depressing, the era we're kind of living through, but I think it has to get better. I mean, well, I hope it gets better.
As long as I'm alive and I have breath to fight, I am going to keep fighting to make it a better world for drug users.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story and everything. I hope to talk to you soon.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Troy. Take care.
Thanks for listening to Narcotica, an independent production by Narco Media. Co-hosted and co-produced by Zachary Siegel, Troy Farah, Christopher Maraff, and Aaron Ferguson. I'm your co-producer, Aaron Ferguson. If you like the show, you can find out more at narcocast.com and support us by joining our Patreon. Just go to patreon.com/Narcotica. We are excited to announce that a portion of the proceeds from the show will now go toward the Urban Survivors Union, which is the National Drug Users Union, a group of directly impacted advocates for drug user health in America. This is the way social change happens from the ground up, and we are so excited to support this group that is doing such important work to fight stigma against people who use drugs. If you're a patron, you also get free stickers which are personally mailed to you. You can also request a shout out on the show. And now patrons can even get 30% off of merch in our new store, which is at narcocast.myshopify.com. We have t-shirts and coffee mugs, one that says "There are drugs in here," which is awesome. More stuff will be added soon. As always, we're so grateful to the folks that make this show possible. A little goes a long way, so thanks for making Narcotica happen. We're ad-free and we want to keep it that way. If Patreon just isn't for you, that's fine. You can help us out by spreading the word. Tell all your friends about the podcast, advocating for social justice and abolishing the drug war. You can also rate us wherever you get your podcasts. Our theme music is by Glassboy, and Jenny Shea is the voice of Narcotica. Additional music is by myself, alias Nomad1, drug using producer. Well, I guess that's all. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. Until next time.